Welcome to Cosmic Comics, Games and Collectibles, your zen of geekism. We carry comics old and new, magazines, toys, games like Pokemon, Magic, D&D. Want Godzilla, Ultraman, Star Trek, Ninja Turtles, Funko Pops? You'll find it all here. Shop our Cosmic Sound Room and pick up a record or two. Enjoy our Comic Coffee Lounge with a cup of Sasquatch coffee or a delicious menu item while geeking out over a super cool movie on our big screen. Come by and say hello to Maui. Cosmic Comic, Games and Collectibles. Superman loves us, and so will you.
And good evening, everybody. I am RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at criticalblast.com. And I want to welcome everyone in the chat who's already watching. Thank you for showing up. We're going to have some interesting discussion tonight, I think. I want to point out that, hey, we're a real channel now. YouTube has given us the blessing, the hominis dominus, so to speak. And we are, we've even allowed for a membership tier. Not being creators, we don't have a whole lot of stuff like trading cards and stuff to give you, so we put just the very minimal tier if you like to support the channel, and we will, support you back. Right now, we're starting with the 3-inch holofoil trading stickers and the 2-inch keychains. So everybody who becomes a member of the channel, we're going to reach out to you and say, hey, we got these for you. We're going to send them to you. Tell us where. We've already got one membership. I can't believe we did that well. But anyway, if that's something you want to do, great. If not, I don't care. I was doing it before. I'll continue doing it after. We do ask you to, like and share, not for us, but for our guests, to promote their books and get that out there, get the word out so people will be aware of them and back the creators. And tonight we have with us Mr. Carson Grubaugh. You're the artist on The Strange Death of Alex Raymond with Dave Sim.
Yeah, one of Dave's the other one. It's mostly his book, but yeah, I got to take over at some point, which was wild.
Yeah, now because this isn't something that just started recently. He's been working on this a while, right?
Yeah, I think in 2012 he started releasing Glamour Puss. I don't know the timeline on that, but I think maybe 2012 he started Strange with Alex Raymond. It's definitely been going on for over 10 years.
It sat for a while.
Close to 10 years. Well, he started in Glamour Puss, which was a parody of like the fashion industry at the same time as being a book about the history of photorealistic art in comic strips. That ended, I think, at issue 24 or 25. And after that, well, the complaint about it was no one liked the fashion industry stuff. It was just like, why are you drawing these fashion models with these jokes about the fashion industry? We don't get it. But we really like the stuff about photorealism and this thing about Alex Raymond's car crash. So IDW gave him a deal to just pick up that part of the story, and they were going to release the book in single issues, monthly or bi-monthly or something. And he couldn't keep up with that. So then they thought about it as a series of graphic novels. And then in 2015, so I think he started working on it as Strange Death of Alex Raymond in 2012. I think Glamour Puss was 2008, 2009. But in 2015, he started having trouble with his wrist, and he couldn't draw up to his satisfaction anymore. And in 2016, I started talking to him and saying, hey, I think I can mimic what you're doing there reasonably well. And he got to try out for it and immediately was like, yeah, you're the dude. And so I got to start doing the art for it. Initially it was interstitial sequences in between what he had done. And after a certain point, I just took over where he left off in the book. So what would have been volume 2, I picked up from there, and I got to finish the art, which was, that's huge. Coming out of nowhere and getting to work with someone of Dave's status is
exactly
pretty big honor.
And the artwork it's more than just stylized realism to me. I mean, it's hyper stylized realism or hyper realism, because there's so much detail. going into here. I would look at it and say a machine had to do this at some point, not a human being. This is a print from something.
And that's why our hands fall apart.
I can imagine. But so can you tell us, is this based in any kind of reality, or is this one of these fantasy biography things that, it's a little known name and we're going to throw some voodoo behind it here to make it more sexy?
That's probably going to be up to the reader to decide. In Dave's mind, I mean, Alex Raymond's definitely not a little known name. I think today, unfortunately, he's not as well known, but at the time he was big enough that he was having articles in like Time magazine and stuff.
Sure.
So as important as it can get in the field of comics. The story of Alex Raymond being in a car crash and all of that is very real. The research that Dave does is all like super intensely researched. He has a research assistant. So all of that's very real. There's definitely speculative parts on Dave's part where he infers from the research he's done what was going on. And that's where I would say you got to leave it up to any individual reader. I would compare it to From Hell, where Alan Moore did read everything he could possibly read about Jack the Ripper and then made his own story from it. Except Alan Moore was more willing to claim I'm making a fiction. I would say Dave is, saying not that this is reality, but this is what I think really happened, So whereas Alan Moore is like, I'm not claiming that I even think this is what happened. I just think this is the best story. So it's a little bit different in that sense. So somewhere in between.
It kind of parallels in my mind the mysterious murder of George Reeves. George Reeves, rather, the actor who played Superman, who was shot, and we're like, well, who shot him? Nobody knows. Some say it was a suicide. Some say it was a gangster because he was sleeping with some gangster's girlfriend. Way to go, Superman. You do have a video on here, and before we get too much further into it, I'm going to go ahead and play that, give people a little sample of what they're looking at with this Kickstarter, which, by the way, has 1 day left to go, folks. So if this interests you at all, you want the Kickstarter level tier support, get it through here, because after this, it's going to go to, it'll be on Amazon. The Amazon link is also in the description below, but you're going to have to wait for a while, and you won't get any specials with it.
You can order it from Diamond, so you could go to your shop and just have them order it from Diamond. It will be in bookstores too through Diamond Book Distributors. I don't know if it will be Barnes and Noble and whatnot, but
tell your LCS guy that you want it and support your local comic shop first. If that's an option, he'll get it for you. Then great. Let's take a look at this video here. And again, I look at that art and I'm like, that's just the detail on this. It's very much like Alex Raymond's art was on the Flash Gordon series.
Yeah. That's the precedent. That and Al Williamson.
Yeah, that's and Macra Boy is another one that he used to do the Captain Marvel Jr. books. We see the Captain Marvel Shazam books, and he's got the very cartoony face, and then Macra Boy comes in and does Captain Marvel Jr., and it's like, it's very much the Dave Sims style, this very hyper-realistic style. We had a question in the chat, wants to know, is there an advantage to the Kickstarter here? I mean, if you choose the Kickstarter now, as opposed to waiting until the comic shop can get you a copy, what do you get? What do you get extra that you couldn't get anywhere else?
The Kickstarter started out selling a limited edition, and that was limited to an edition of 301 copies, and that came with an extra book and a signed bookplate and all of that. Those are sold out. Every now and then someone unpledges from that tier, and one opens up and it gets snatched up really quick, so people can look for that. if you get the $40 version, which is how much it would cost in the shop, you can get it from us. So to us, the benefit is we get more of the profit, and the Kickstarter is being used to help fund the print run and the advertising we're doing. So that helps us pay for the book and get it out into the world. The other advantage there is I will be signing all of those copies that come from the Kickstarter. So you're basically getting it signed by, you don't get Dave's signature, but you get it signed by one of us at least for the same price you would get it in the bookstore. And then the Kickstarter also has other interesting add-ons. So if you're interested in like process, we're releasing a book of Dave's tracing paper. So that was his process for composing, is tracing over things onto tracing paper. There's stuff like that. There's some cool little prints. That's like there's a print that we're working on now. That's the only time that me and Dave have actually will be having drawn on the same piece of paper. So that's what I was talking about earlier, where like I did the backgrounds and we were talking before the show, and he'll be doing a Cerebus on there. So there's stuff like that. But for someone who just wants the book for $40, the really only advantage is I would be signing it. And if that doesn't matter to you, like that's totally fine. Go get it from your shop. Like absolutely support the local shops. We're not trying to step on any shop's toes with the Kickstarter. It was mostly for the limited edition to fund the print run.
Yeah, and you guys have you had $1,000 goal. You've raised $52,000. That's you just got to be, you and Dave both got to be feeling really great about that. It's a lot of money to be raised.
Yeah, me and Sean feel really good about that. Dave has stepped away from the project. So basically me and Sean Robinson, who owns Living the Line and is the publisher and is the guy that makes sure that all of our crazy detailed art reproduces correct. We're very happy about that. I mean, we set $1,000 because like the book was getting printed, whether the Kickstarter happened or not. Like we're confident that we'll sell enough through Amazon and the stores that we're not going to lose money on it. The Kickstarter was just a way to make sure that was covered ahead of time. So, you know, that $1,000 limit, like in terms of Kickstarter, where it says, oh, you're at like 50,000% over what you asked for or something, that's a little bit skewed in our case because we set it so low. So,
yeah,
you know, every $1,000 over that $1,000 makes it look like we're doing really better. But I mean, we're doing great. We really appreciate the support. I see the question, is it stuff from Glamour Puss or is it all new? It's pretty much all new. The beginning of the book starts with Dave saying how he got to where he's at. Like he's a character. We're both characters in the book. The book, we talk about the book. It's a very meta book. So Dave starts saying, hey, I was doing this thing, Glamour Puss. This is why I was doing it. Here's some of what I was doing in there. And so that first issue, the first chapter has some of the stuff from Glamour Puss, but it's definitely been remixed. The dialogue's been remixed and some of the panels have been moved around and recomposed. And then it turns into a very different book from Glamour Puss very, very quickly.
Now, has Dave shared what sent him down this road? I mean, was there something twigged him to the fact that, hey, this car crash is a little hinky?
Yeah, that's definitely a huge part of the story. What happened was he was doing Glamour Puss, and Glamour Puss, seriously, it's just fashion model stuff, half the book, and the other half of the book was, and he was doing them in the photorealist comic style, and then the other half was like, here's the history of this style that I like so much that I'm trying to learn by drawing these fashion model. And he wasn't planning on making a book about the car crash. It was just one of the things in the history of these giants of illustration that happened that he was going to cover. And because he's such a thorough researcher, as he started to research it, he saw that anytime he read an account of it, and this is including primary documents like the news articles that were coming out the day after and the report from the morgue and all of that stuff, none of the details seemed to line up. Everyone's story seemed different in like bizarre ways, and he covers those accounts in the book. And so he's like, why is there such a weird, like in one account he hits a tree, in another account he hits a wall, you know, some of them like Stan Drake's ears are getting ripped off, some of them they're not. So he just thought, this is weird. And he also started to think, this is just weird. Like, why, like, I don't know, in Dave's mind, like, this isn't a way that comic artists die, like in sports car wrecks. So he thought that
Yeah.
was weird. I mean, at the time though, these guys were like superstars, so I don't know how weird that was. They definitely had money. But I don't know. It's just a rabbit hole that he went down, and the more and more he researched it, the weirder it got. And you're asking about, how much of this is real. There's stuff in there where he's found evidence that is legitimate evidence that, like, the guy who was writing Alex Raymond's strip when he died, Rip Kirby, Ward Green, who was the main editor at King Features Syndicate that the strip was published through. He was the writer of Rip Kirby for many, many years. He died 9 months before Raymond died, but Dave has some pretty convincing evidence that it's for sure Ward Green knew Margaret Mitchell, who wrote Gone with the Wind. B, it's for sure that Ward Green knew and hung out with Aleister Crowley and William Seabrook. There's letters that kind of suggest that Ward Green was blackmailing Margaret Mitchell to try and get the rights to publish a Gone with the Wind comic book strip, or comic panel strip. And The Heart of Juliet Jones, which was Stan Drake's strip that he's so popular for, is apparently based on a 30-page script that Margaret Mitchell had given them. And she had kind of sworn off ever writing again after Gone with the Wind. So it's very odd that she wrote something. They knew each other when they were younger, and he seems to have had some information from a previous husband of hers. Like, he had a book that he had come to Ward Green with saying, hey, would you be interested in publishing this? And he's kind of using his status as a publisher and an old friend of Margaret Mitchell to be like, hey, just to let you know, he came to us. But it's also saying, like, hey, I've got all this information on you. And there's evidence in the strips, Dave thinks at least, that he was using the strip to communicate with her his intentions as well.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Like, and planning things like, okay, he's gonna go meet the Mitchells, or I don't know what her husband's name was at the time. I forget what her last name would have been at the time, but he's going to meet her and her husband at Grand Central Station. And the day that he's to meet them, there's also a strip published that day of Rip Kirby meeting someone at Grand Central Station, and the story is about a woman being blackmailed with details from her past. So, being the contributing, like the head editor, he knows what the schedule is. He knows if I write this story on this day, they've planned this trip a month ahead of time, I can write this in. And she knows that the day that she shows up, she's reading this story about someone meeting someone at Grand Central Station and blackmailing them.
Now, the thing that stands out to me, first of all, right here, is the fact that he knows that this novelist on a train is going to read the funny pages and look at this strip. Because I would never suspect that anybody might be reading the comic strips these days in the newspaper if they pick one up.
Yeah, but if he knew her and supposedly she was a big fan of them. So these are the things that, Dave finds these things that are legitimate. Like, they definitely knew each other. They wrote letters to each other. That's all, like, on record. You can go to, like, university archives and find that stuff. He extrapolates out of it this picture that he thinks Ward Green was blackmailing her. And whether you buy into that or not, that's where it maybe takes that from hell twist. But there's these interesting things like that in the book. And the fact that he knew Aleister Crowley, that's definitely on record too.
Yeah, anybody who knew Aleister Crowley, they're immediately suspect in my book.
And so Dave thinks that he wasn't just blackmailing her. He thinks that he was using the comic strip to do, like, black magic, basically, to try and manipulate her. So that's, if you believe in that stuff, maybe that was going on. If you don't believe in that stuff, maybe you can accept that he believed in that and was trying to do it. But Dave believes in that enough to think that there were negative consequences of messing with, entities of a dark nature. And there is, if you look at the strips, there's some very weird, if you're familiar with the occult, you're like, oh yeah, he's definitely referencing this tarot card. He's definitely I never would have seen that, but Dave sees it all. And then with my knowledge of that kind of stuff, I go, yeah, that's kind of hard to deny it's in there. Whether, he was actually doing magic or not, who knows? But
sure. So how did this editor die?
Ward Green, he died of a heart attack on his way to Cuba, I believe. That's part of the story, definitely. All of these deaths, like part of what Dave is postulating, I guess, is that these deaths are the consequence of messing around with things you shouldn't mess about with.
Yeah. Heart attack's a classic long distance voodoo killing kind of thing.
Yeah, and a lot of car wrecks. Like Margaret Mitchell died; she got hit by a taxi. A lot of these people wind up in car wrecks, and there's these themes that repeat throughout all of these strips and through these people's lives, and the book becomes this metatextual interweaving of these themes. Dave thinks it's stuff that's happening for real. I take more of the view that there's narrative patterns that we can link together and choose to link together or not.
Yeah, I mean, if the woman in the Rip Kirby strip gets hit by a car, and then the next day Margaret Mitchell's getting hit, that would have been a really freaky connection to have made. But
there's really weird numerical connections. My favorite example, because it involves me, is Stan Drake has a panel that was released 1 year exactly before Alex Raymond. Alex Raymond died on September 9/6. Yeah, September 6th, I believe. I should know these details better. 9/6/1956, something like that. So on 9/6/1955, there's a panel in Stan Drake, the other guy that was in the car, where a character is introduced for the first time, his name being Carson, and his last name is G, which I'm Carson Grubaugh. But this character is Carson Gordon, and that's also weird because, Alex Raymond drawing Flash Gordon. So you get Carson G, and he's making a comment about his quick drying ink. So he's holding the pen and he's inking, and I read that and I go, "Oh my God, I'm in this strip!" And then I send it to our research guy, and he's like, even worse. It's released a year to the day before the wreck, and there's those clusters of like coincidence that it's really easy to, whether you take it seriously or not, it's really easy to build a story out of it, at least.
Now, looking at the page on the Kickstarter here, and my mouse just starts scrolling with me. We will get along much better. This is Alex Raymond driving the car. He's flooring the accelerator. So saying that he's floored the accelerator, this tells me that Dave is pointing towards some sort of a suicide act.
Dave, yeah, that's part of what he's exploring. Was it suicide? Was it murder? I mean, this isn't really giving anything away because he covered this stuff in Glamour Puss too. He's talking about the rivalry between Alex Raymond and Stan Drake, and that Stan Drake was kind of the first guy that came along and was able to achieve and maybe even outdo the amount of realism that Raymond had been doing. He had been kind of untouched for years, and then Drake kind of came along and make it look effortless to be even better, and his strip was like outselling him and stuff. It's not so clear how well or at least to me, it's not so clear how well they knew each other. So how weird it is for him to be behind Drake's car, the wheel of his car, So there's definitely, and that's always been part of the story of the death of Alex Raymond in the industry, something that people have talked about because it's a huge loss and it's weird and the details shift, but people have always kind of speculated. He had been kind of caught up in having an affair. Things hadn't been going so good for him in his personal life, apparently. Apparently, he had got in 3 other wrecks recently, so he seemed to be exhibiting, kind of dangerous behavior. So speculating that it could have been a suicide, or speculating that, he has this rivalry and, maybe Drake is angering him somehow and he's trying to take Drake out with him. Like that's not just Dave's speculation. That's been kind of part of the story around this for a while. But, other people say, well, they were just on a rainy road and things got out of control. And he freaked out and thought he was hitting the gas pedal, but just slammed down the accelerator.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Stan Drake also died in this crash.
No, he got thrown out of the car.
Okay.
He wasn't wearing a seatbelt, I don't think, and he got thrown out of the car and survived. Um, Alex Raymond, the steering wheel crushed his chest, and according to the different stories, either a piece of glass shot through his mouth and like shot through his head, or like
Oh.
the metallic rim of the car maybe impaled his head. But my understanding is that the wheel and the whole like dashboard got pushed in and just crushed his chest. That's I think what's on the death certificate, is he died from the impact to his chest.
Yeah, that extra detail of something impaling through the front of the face, that definitely screams out, that doesn't normally happen in a crash. I mean, it could, but it seems very coincidentally precise.
And it may be something, these are all like someone just did a video reviewing the book, and they're like, these are a bunch of people who tell stories for a living, so it's no surprise that when these stories get relayed over the years that people had to like embellish it a little bit. They're
Sure.
storytellers, so some of those things, it's like, yeah, man, a piece of glass like went through his head.
See, I would think that, of all the accounts, Drake's would be the most accurate because he was there.
Yeah, but also like it was a traumatic event and he was thrown out of a car and concussed, and like people don't remember that kind of thing very clearly. Also, he was pretty well known, I think, as being a storyteller, so who knows. Will this be an Indiegogo as well? No, sorry. I know there's political reasons why people prefer Indiegogo, but no, we've done pretty well on the Kickstarter. If you don't like Kickstarter, I know that's a thing. Just order it from Amazon or order it from your shop, but we're perfectly happy with
I prefer
them.
Indiegogo simply because they take my money at the time I give it to them and don't let me have a month to forget about it. But if you want to get it on Kickstarter for that reason, it's 24 hours to go. So if you order it tonight, you're taking your money out tonight.
Yeah, if you want to get it from us and like give us a bigger cut of the profit basically, or you want some of the extras, definitely get it on Kickstarter. I know that for whatever reason some people don't like Kickstarter, but that's just what's been easier for us. But yeah, if for whatever reason you don't like Kickstarter, like please get it from your local comic store. And if you're only looking to get the $40 book, and please get it from your bookstore. That's totally fine.
None of these pages have any wasted space in them. I mean, there's no white background that panels are laying on. There's no gutters. This is these panels that are just flying through this almost like a Doctor Who vortex.
Yeah,
it sucks you in.
His compositions and designs in this. I mean, we're showing off some of the crazier pages. There's definitely, it's not like that the whole book. Like there's moments of rest too, and Dave's very aware of the rhythm of a book. Like in notes to me about compositions, that I worked on. These are all ones that he drew, but he'll tell me like, okay, we've had enough of the crazy panels. Now let's go back to a grid. Like that one's more of a grid. So he's very well aware of that. But yeah, his layouts on this are phenomenal. Like there's some stuff going on in there that I think is new contributions to what you can do with comics. The one I found particularly exciting and kind of stole for my ending and is thinking about not just panels one next to each other, but thinking about a three-dimensional space, and that you can relate one panel to another through space. And so you can show layers of meaning, like imagine layers in Photoshop, where we have a bunch of layers of glass and the panels exist on layers of glass. And so you can have things that relate this way and this way. So you can make a three-dimensional space of creating meaning instead of a normal comic space, which moves like linearly in 2 dimensions. So that page, if you scroll back up a little bit, is a perfect example. You were saying they're going through this Doctor Who space, and you'll see all of the overlapping panels. And that, I think, is something that he takes to real and then I tried to follow up with it and almost maybe take it even further because I'm competitive. But that kind of like collaging through space and the things he does with that is so fascinating to me. Something I loved about this project and one of the reasons I got involved in the first place.
Yeah, one of the few people I know who actually does this. I found it. I didn't stop and point it out, but I did see it. Is Jimmy Gownley, and he's got a quote about the book here. Jimmy's also extremely clever about the way he uses panels in a kid's book. I think one of the things I will always refer back to is when he did "When the Past Is a Present," and they do the thing with the family photo album. I don't know if you've read his works or not, but
I need to because he's been super supportive, and he's also spent a lot of time talking to me and Sean about like the publishing side of it, because he's been very successful. So how to deal with Diamond and stuff. Me and Sean are also doing a YouTube channel where we look at books for this kind of stuff, and we definitely are going to look at Jimmy's work and take a look at Amelia. So if he's doing that, I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, pay particular attention to, and it's not like it's like right there on the page. It's like you get it near the end of the book when something snaps in place, and you're like, "Holy crap! I've been in this the whole time." But they do this thing with the family photo albums where she's sitting on the couch with her mom, and it's like, here's great grandpa at such and such. And what he does, the photo is it's a gasoline alley strip. I mean, it's the characters you recognize from Amelia Rules, but they're drawn in a gasoline alley style. And then, here's, your great uncle, and it's like a Beetle Bailey style or a High and Lois style. But it's comics through the era. And then when he gets to nearer the end of the book, and she's getting this, 11-year-old realization that, she is a composite of all the people who came before her and made her, all those strips, pieces of them come together in that one page, and they're the same panels, and they're saying the same things, but those panels in that order are delivering a completely different message. On top of which, if you pull back and look at the panels, they make Amelia's face. So yes, she is a composite of everything that came before her.
Oh, that's amazing.
It was chilling to watch somebody do that kind of thing. He's a master at it.
Yeah, and he's been such a huge supporter of us. Like, I can't thank him enough. I'll admit I haven't read his books because I knew they were kids' books, so they haven't been a priority. But saying that, okay, that's priority. Another guy who's doing this just because I love his work and I want to give him some play is a cat I follow on Instagram named EV Glenn, ES Glenn, Everett Glenn. He does a book called Unsmooth, and I've seen the second issue of it. It's not in print yet, but I've seen a PDF of it, and he does a lot of this like page as surface for collage and like ripped strips piled on top of each other. Yeah, and it's something I've not seen a lot of, but I think is really like expanding what we can do with comics. So definitely check out Unsmooth. Number 1 doesn't have as much of that stuff, but still get that book, Unsmooth by E.V. Glenn. And number 2 that's coming out is a huge jump forward. And so I would promote that book all day for sure.
I'll take a look at it.
Yeah, he's great.
This panel here kind of takes me into an MC Escher state of mind, where, I mean, the pen is drawn hyper realistically as we're seeing it draw a hyper realistic face, to the point where this last panel here, you almost lose track of the fact that this is a 2-dimensional face on a piece of paper that's being drawn on, and it literally looks like the guy's got a pen pointed to his chin, or in his eye. That's always there's your Frederick Wortham needle to the eye.
Yeah, the eye damage. Dave's really big into the eye damage motif or something. He did that in Cerebus too. For some reason, he's and that comes into play in this book too. It's something he keeps coming back to. Yeah, that's super intentional. That's part of the theme of the book is if you think like Dave does, that people are using comics as a space of importing things. And I think Alan Moore and Grant Morrison think this way too, right? They think that you can use comics to import things from fantasy to reality, like import export. Yeah. Like if you stitch what's going on in reality, like if you put real things into the strip, draw real things into the strip, you create a bridge between fantasy and reality, and then you can start to export things back out. And that's kind of the process of what Dave is suggesting. Ward Green and Alex, I don't know how privy he thought Alex Raymond was to it, but he definitely thought Ward Green was using the comic strip to influence reality, and that you need someone drawing realistically to really create that bridge. So you, of course, have Raymond doing it. So things like that are very important. And then the book, like I said, has me and Dave as characters. Like, this is Dave learning how to draw like a certain artist and talking about the tools that he used and talking about the techniques. So the story of Dave learning and then the story of me learning these techniques is part of the story of the book. So in that sense, I've heard a couple people compare it to Understanding Comics. It has this like educational aspect to it, which is a really bizarre combo with the kind of from hell hoodoo voodoo theory side of it. But it makes it's like, if you care at all about comics as a medium, it's a must read.
Yeah,
I can say that because I just helped out.
Well, and I do know that Alan Moore is an avowed magician, practicing magician,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't mean stage magician. I mean, literal. I can do magic, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I believe that Grant's theory is the whole, which he espoused when he did Animal Man, was that our creators create a world that's better than the one they live in, because why would you create one that's worse? So therefore, we are created to be better than our creator, because why would he create something worse than himself? But
that's a bleak view.
yeah, exactly.
Like God's worse than us. I mean, Grant Morrison is definitely an avowed mystic too, right? I mean, he's into chaos magic. That Jazz Crab is saying that.
And I don't think the two of them get along either.
No, but these guys are all like, I know Dave gets a reputation as being a nutbag for some of these views, but it's like, man, so is Alan Moore. Like, if that's how you feel about people who believe in mysticism, so is Grant Morrison, so is Neil Gaiman. Like, all of these guys seem to think there's something about comics that is like at least a good metaphor. Alan Moore is always talking about dimensions, right? And Grant Morrison does that too. Like, we are to the two-dimensional comic, like us as a three-dimensional or four-dimensional thing is to the two-dimensional comic as like a 5 or 6-dimensional thing is to us. So they definitely think that it's not just Dave. I mean, it's interesting how they kind of all have the same premise, and they take very, Dave is a strict like Christian, Jewish, Muslim monotheist, an Abrahamic monotheist. Alan Moore's like worships the sock puppet. Grant Morrison's out there doing God knows what.
Well, and Alan would do stuff in Watchmen that if you didn't know it was there, there's no way that you would find it without being directed to it. His chapter 5 of Watchmen, which is the first half of the Rorschach story, if you open that to the middle, the whole, and then you lift it and look down, and lift it and look down, it's just a tunnel of Rorschachs. Where not only are the panels laid out in mirror form, but the action in them and the characters in them are laid out in mirror form. They're facing different directions, or they're doing an opposite act. It was just
and I mean
insane.
what he did in Promethea, which is really his grimoire on magic, right? I mean, that's where I got interested in that kind of stuff. I moved away from the interest in that, but the formal tricks that he pulled in Promethea, I still think are some of the greatest that have ever been done. And I think Dave is pulling some similarly impressive. It's hard to beat some of the stuff Alan Moore did in Promethea in terms of like how does a human being come up with that? But there's some pretty wicked formal tricks in this book as well. And I think it does come from, I mean, they've all done that like thing where it's like the character gets ripped out of Flatland. Alan Moore talks about that in From Hell too.
Flatland's a great book.
Flatland, he gets ripped out of Flatland. And so they all seem to think this relationship that we have to the creation in the similar way that some higher entity. It's just, what their opinions on what those entities are and what they're up to seem to be different, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. You do have a tier here that I didn't look into as we were scrolling down here. $906.56 tier.
Yeah, that's a one of a kind. So what that one sold, it's a one off. What that is there's the original art. So the book plate, this is the original art for the book plate. This will be the book plate in the 301 edition. This is the book plate that both it will be printed out, and both Dave and I will sign it. I already actually have all those. Dave's already signed them. I've signed them, and they're numbered. So those will be put into those books. That 906.56 one gets the original art put into it instead of the book plate, and it gets a book plate too, so it's signed by Dave, but then they'll get my original art put.
Very nice.
And that person has reached out to me, and we'll save that drawing for later. They can release that one. But that person also commissioned me to do another drawing that will be in the front. So they'll have two pieces of original art in the book. The price was morbid. That's 9,656. That's the day of the crash.
The day of the crash. Okay, I get it
Yeah.
now.
And so when I was negotiating with that buyer on a price, it was morbid, but we both thought that was appropriate, about the right price for something like that. And he gets a kick out of those numerical things.
Now, this is a 320-page hardcover, deluxe hardcover. Does this have a dust jacket, or is it just printed on the hardcover?
No, it does not. It does not have a dust jacket. I personally really don't like dust jackets. So if Sean would have tried to design a dust jacket on it, I would have said no way. Because the first thing I do anytime I get a book is I just throw the dust jacket away unless it's absolutely essential.
Yeah.
I don't get dust jackets. Like, they are more likely to get beat up than just a book cover. Like, if a book's going to look crappy, it's because of the dust jacket. So no, it definitely doesn't have. If you're trying to understand about like the physicality of the book, I just got Barry Smith's Monsters. Because we're going to be doing a YouTube episode on this. Me and Sean, we're going to look at the book and kind of do a critical analysis of the art. This is, which is funny because Dave started out, mimicking Barry Smith's style on Cerebus. This is a very good idea of the size of the book in terms of height. So it's slightly oversized at like the 18.5 by 12. In terms of thickness, I think this one has about 20 more pages, but the weight is about the same. The weight of the paper is the same. The fact that we'll be printing on non-coated paper, so it's got a more matte feel to it instead of super glossy.
Okay.
And then I was talking to Sean about, I really like that it's not a glossy cover. I like that there's a more matte feel to the cover. So I think we're going to print our cover that way. And then now that we've done well on the Kickstarter, I think we're going to laminate like the glass in the rain on the cover. So it's like a shiny.
Oh, a spot gloss.
Yeah, we'll have a spot gloss on it. I think. So that's, if you have a copy of Monsters, that's the size in terms of dimension and the general like heft of the book and the quality of the paper and stuff. That's a pretty good indication.
Okay. And you do have some add-ons that aren't, shown over to the side here, or at least I think you do. You've still got remainder copies of You Don't Know Jack.
Yes.
Some of which are signed by you and Dave and Jack Van Dyke. And Jack is a female. She's the lead. She's the comic store owner in the book.
And she's in Strange Death of Alex Raymond too. She started as the interstitial character in Strange Death of Alex Raymond, and then Dave liked her so much, he said, let's give her her own book. His actual joke was like, he was hoping that he wrote Jack so sympathetically and like that because he's always, he gets a lot of heat from feminists. So he hoped that a feminist would read Strange Death of Alex Raymond and say, well, I really liked this female comic store manager, but the rest of the book was garbage. And then I said, well, why don't we make a book for that, like take that character and make our own book. And so we did that. And so that was like a prequel to Strange Death of Alex Raymond that no one asked for. That's what that book was.
Yeah, that was a fun book, though. I mean, that was basically she and Dave kind of going at it,
arguing about politics, and me sitting in the middle, going, "Oh my God, you're both too far to either side."
Now we have what's the strip here? Now we've got
That's the one I was talking about, where Dave's going to go in and finish Cerebus. So I did the Alex Raymond recreation in the middle, and I drew myself in there based on Dave's layouts. And then Dave's going to go draw Cerebus in there. He calls him Rip Cerebus, so he looks like Rip Kirby with the pipe and everything, but it's Cerebus. And then that will be lettered. So that's being released as a print, and what we're trying to do with that, the print will be signed by both me and Dave and numbered. However many get ordered, it'll be 1 out of 86 or however many get ordered. But we're going to reprint it on like a tan paper. It's not going to be newsprint, but it's going to be we're trying to make it look like it's a newspaper strip. And then Dave will auction off the original art, because it is the only time in the entire 5 years that we've collaborated that we'll both actually draw on the same piece of paper. So it's the only piece that you could own that we've both actually drawn on. So that will get auctioned later through Heritage Auctions. But that's a $15 print that will be signed by both of us. There's also the book, 120-page book, I think, if you scroll down a little further.
Oh, more edits.
Yeah, that book there is the tracing paper book. So if you're interested in his process, those are scans of his tracing papers.
Just the not only just the line detail impresses me on this, but the sheer realism of the mechanical devices, the facial expressions. It's like he was there and took a photograph, because you can have a photograph of Alex Raymond and I can say, yeah, I can draw that photograph in that pose, but I can't change the expression because I don't see him making that expression. And you and Dave can do that.
Well, I can't. I'm not as good at that. I need the photo. Like, I need to see a photo. Dave is a better cartoonist, so he can pre-visualize it and come up with it. So I was always scared when it was stuff that we didn't have a photograph of. But Dave could pencil things. Dave could pencil things like that, and then I could finish them up. I could basically ink or take his pencils, and I got better at it through the course of the book. But he's definitely superior. Luckily, most of that car crash stuff Dave already had drawn, and because Dave quit the book, we don't exactly get to the car crash. Like, the book becomes more of a story about Dave going down rabbit holes and the project falling apart. It's like a story of its own undoing.
It's a story of how you started to make the book and didn't, and now you're concluding it with the book that you did make.
Yeah, because what happened is Dave quit. We finished 2 volumes. Like, I helped him finish the first volume, and that was just me doing the in-betweeners. And then volume 2 is I started taking over the main content of the book. And then at that point, he was not releasing volume 1, and we'd been working on this and Jack for like 4 years or something. So, Dave, I got to get back to my own career until this book gets released, because I'm trying to get a full-time job teaching, and I need stuff on my resume to do that. And he was putting up all these walls to getting volume 1 released. So I said, I can't do anything else. Send me all the stuff for volume 3, and if it takes 4 years for volume 1 to come out, fine. But when that happens, I'll start working on volume 3. So I had 21 pages of volume 3, and then a lot of different things that we don't need to go into. But he wound up saying, you know what, I quit the project. I just can't keep doing it. I got to focus on making money. And at that point I said, well, I put all this time into it. It's a beautiful book. People need to see it. It needs to be on record, even if it's not finished, even if it's not like he had 4 or 5 volumes planned, and we had about two volumes and 21 pages of volume 3. So I said, Dave's always had this thing, like, anyone that works on a book owns it and can do whatever they want with it. I said, okay, well, I'm going to publish it then. And he said, you have my blessing. And he kind of knew some, looking at interpreting the magical things that are in the strips. I had my own experiences with with that were different than his. And he had been encouraging me to publish a supplementary book anyways, like, do 48 pages about how this stuff is manifesting in your life. And I said, well, why don't I just end the book with that? Like, this is where Dave got to. This is why he quit. This is what I saw. And then I can wrap it up. So it's not Dave's ending to the story, but it's a readable ending to the book. It's not like the book just says, and this is how far he got.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because if there were like going to be 2 more volumes, I'm just wondering how much more information could we have squeezed into it.
Well, that's
like 560 pages, but
that's the thing is, like, it became infinite, I think. And so to me, the story became about, once you start going down rabbit holes, they're endless.
Yeah.
And so I think thematically we can make the book kind of about that too. And so the ending is more of a commentary on the process of how we got to where we're at. And instead of just saying, well, this is as far as he got, here's the pages to have them on the record, it's like at least a readable ending to the experience. So yeah, that's kind of it became this other book, but that's because he gave me permission, thankfully, to take what he had done and what we had done together, write my own ending to it. So at some point it became, I inherited the project, and I did about 30-40 pages worth of like wrapping it up in a way that I think is thematically relevant, wraps up kind of some of what I saw and what Dave was doing, and then putting my own commentary on the whole thing. But all of that stuff with the car crash, luckily I didn't have to really draw much of that. That was something I was worried about. So,
well,
it's blessing.
It's a huge book, 8.25 by 12, 320 pages, $40. And I just read below, I want to point this out to the chat, that $40 includes domestic shipping. So if you're in the U.S., $40 is what you pay. It's a $40 book, flat out done deal.
Yeah.
You're going to spend more than $40 because you're going to get that add-on page, and there's going to be something there you're going to want to throw on there.
Yeah, for sure.
I know that.
If you live internationally, unfortunately, shipping's pretty hefty, but that's just what it is to ship.
It's a big, heavy book. I do international shipping for Critical Blast for this fulfillments. I'm not sure what I would do with a 320-page hardcover book, because we get around with drop ships, but that would be it'd be like shipping a car if you put a bunch of those books in one box.
Yeah, they as soon as they get heavy. Oh, Jimmy's here. Hi, Jimmy. Thank you.
Hey, Jimmy, we've been singing your praises, man.
Yeah, and I had to admit that I need to go read your books. I haven't got to them yet, and you've been so gracious, and now I feel like an ass.
I walked him through that magic trick you did in When the Past is a Present with the family albums. So Carson's gonna take a look at that.
Yeah, me and Sean need to get that onto our Living the Line channel. Yeah, he was hyping that big time. How you collaged panels together, which is awesome. Me and Sean will definitely look at that.
I bring Jimmy up once a month, either on Twitter or on YouTube. Somebody was asking about, show us a comic book panel that made you cry, and I was like, oh, easy. I took 3 snapshots of Amelia Rules, where her friend is talking about her father going off to Iraq. Well, I'm not going to say Iraq. It could have been Afghanistan. He was going off military, and he was going to be gone for 3 years. And she said, "Do you know how long 3 years is?" And she goes through the math. This many days, this many hours, this many minutes, this many seconds, and he says, she says goodbye, and you turn the page, and there she is, just standing in the center of the page of a big white field, and it just says 1001. I was like, oh,
damn, yeah. Jimmy.
That's what Jimmy does to you. He tricks you into thinking you're reading Peanuts, and then he just takes this knife to your heart and goes up with it.
And that's where, no, but I'll say that's where I'll admit, the kids lit stuff, it's a gap in my reading. Like I know that I want to read what's it, Raina Telgemeier, Is that how you pronounce that?
Raina Telgemeier.
Telgemeier. I found a used copy of El Defo by C.C. Bell. I have it back on my shelf here. So that's something that I realized that the kids lit stuff is getting really good, and I haven't paid attention to it.
Once you start digging into the kid lit, you might be there for a while, because I find it more enjoyable than a lot of the stuff that's written for adults.
Yeah, I'm realizing that. There's another one that looks really good. Sheets. Is that it? Sheets? Is that what it's called? It's got like a washing machine cover, and it just had a follow-up. I don't know. There is some stuff in Kidlit that I need to look at it.
That one's not ringing the bell to me.
I forget what it's called. Anyways, yeah. So I have to apologize to Jimmy, because he's been super supportive, and I've just kind of, Sheets. Okay. Thank you, Jimmy. It's just stuff I haven't read yet, but thank you for like putting that even more in the forefront for me, because that sounds awesome. So again, everybody in chat, $40 for the hardcover, big, thick, knock a burglar out hardcover. Yeah, that's exactly. I want to make books that you can kill somebody with. Yes, you just put it on the door, right above the door, so that when it opens, it goes like a Three Stooges thing, knock them out. Yeah. And then you got some great add-ons here. I'm going to be trying to get that 8x3 print on a tan cardstock paper, because that just looks so cool. And Carson, shun adultery. Something's telling you to do that in this strip. Yeah, Dave is telling me to do that. I'm not an adulterer. He would call me a fornicator. I'm not even an adult. Yeah, the strip doesn't. Thank you, Seven. The strip doesn't say shun fornication, even though I know Dave would tell me to. Now, fornication is when it's fun. Adultery is when it's, Yeah, that's when it's rude. Well, I've not refreshed the page, and I don't usually have to with Kickstarter, because it's like self-refreshing. No, I can see it updating. Yeah, we've definitely gained since we started this. Well, wonderful. That is what we call our shake and bake moment here, Carson. Yeah. You didn't get to see the shake and bake moment the last time you were on, but it is this.
It's shake and bake, and I help.
Yeah, you guys, you had a sweet intro that I don't remember from last time. Maybe that's just bad. I was in a really crazy spot last time, but that intro that you did with the Batman signal that's new. Yeah, that looked awesome. We had a countdown that we used for like a year every night. And then apparently wherever I bought the royalty-free music from wasn't quite so royalty-free. Oh. and I kept getting notices from YouTube. Like, and I had to keep muting. I'm like, I'm going to have to go back through and mute the 30 seconds of the replay of all of these things. I'm like, screw it. So I got this one here, and it wasn't a week before I got music notifications on that one. And I'm like, oh, no, this isn't right. Fortunately, the person who did it said, I bought the license from a place, but here's a copy with different music. And I'm like, that'll work. And so far, so good. It looked awesome. Yeah, this is, I think both of us are a little bit, like I was doing, last time I was here, I was like sitting on the floor of an empty room. You had just moved in. Like that day, I think, yeah. So now I got bookshelves. Yeah. And you were just taking the teaching position. I think you just got there for that. So hopefully that's going well. Do you get to use this book in your classes as demonstration of techniques and stuff? I mean, it's an academic book at one level. We'll see. One interesting thing I did already is I teach graphic design, and me and Sean were working on the cover, and it's a very difficult book to make a cover for because of the intensity of the detail of the art. It doesn't have that striking, that you'll see it from across the room look that you want from a book cover, and it's black and white art, so it's silly to go coloring it. Me and Sean were just talking about this earlier today. We're on our channel talking about another artist book who had a similar problem. So we were struggling with that, and I really liked the solution Sean came up with. This was like this big image with all of the little details behind it, and then the high the high contrast complementary colors that like, they're electric.
I was going to ask how you came up with the orange and blue, and they are chromatic opposites if I'm seeing my color wheel correctly in my head.
Yeah, they are. So the blue is part of the theme of the ending of the book, I would say, and it was something that was kind of some of the hoodoo voodoo that we experienced in the making of the book that I'm referencing. That's not in the story, but that Sean kind of knew about it. So and that's how I do the pages. Like when I do pages, I print them out in blue and then ink over it. Like I do the prep work in Photoshop and print them out in blue and then ink it and scan it in. And then Sean can just drop out the blue channel in Photoshop and get right back to the black and white. So there's a reason for the blue. And once you pick that blue and you want that pop, orange is just kind of like the obvious color. So yeah, that was where we got the cover from.
Okay. What is your how complete is the book? I mean, it sounds like it's done, like it's, ready to just go to the printers right now.
Oh yeah, it's been that way. I mean, me and Sean we're having people look it over for like spelling errors and stuff still, but we've been through a number of rounds of that already. So it's just going back over with the fine-tooth comb. It gets to the point where you've seen it so much that you're a little bit worried. It's really hard for me, unfortunately, to read the book all the way through now because I've read it so many times. It's like it's hard to, because like you're kind of just filling in what you know. So like if a page is missing, I would almost like mentally fill that page in. Yeah,
you're too close to it. You definitely want to find these kind of errors before it goes to hardcover printing, right, Jimmy? That's a personal story between he and I.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we've done all that, and we're having Eddie Kana, who was Dave's research assistant, and he's been he's just an awesome guy. It's been really helpful to me. A lot of great conversations about these things. He's taking like one last, because somehow Eddie, even though he's as deeper into the research of it all than Dave. He's like the one other guy that's like down in the rabbit holes of the trenches with Dave. He's taking one last look. I don't know how he keeps fresh on it, but it's done. Like we could send it to the printer. I think we need to design a spine for it still or something like that. But it's done. I would not let personally, I would not announce a book and launch a Kickstarter unless I could print it tomorrow, basically. Like you don't know Jack, as soon as the campaign was over, we printed it. I'm not someone who's like going to say, hey, I want to do this book. I need to make all this money so I can like eat for the next 3 months while I draw it. And then once that's done, then it will come out. Like, no, that's why I teach, because I can pay the bills and have health insurance and
exactly
work on things until they're done. And then I can tell people about them.
So this will end tomorrow. And then basically you're just waiting for Kickstarter to hand over the money or collect the money and then hand it over. And then you go to town.
Yeah, and we've already scheduled with the printer. You got right now with the way printing is, you have to schedule ahead. So we probably 3 weeks ago or something, Sean scheduled our print date. I don't know exactly when that is, but I know that a lot of books have been coming out lately because of delays in printing and stuff. So we're hoping to avoid even that by being on their schedule and knowing, okay, this stuff is going to get here early July, and I can start fulfillment to make sure that these people who ordered on Kickstarter get it the same time, or hopefully even a little bit earlier than people who are ordering it from shops or bookstores or Amazon. Yeah, that would be the other benefit.
It is listed on Amazon. I'm going to have to assume that if you're getting ready to go to print, it's already listed in the Diamond catalog. Is this sort of a print on demand kind of level, or are you going with a big print run and when it's gone, it's gone?
Yeah, I don't know what the print run is going to be because we haven't got the numbers from Diamond. My guess is, given how well we've done on Kickstarter, that the money that we have, and looking at Amazon, like I don't know what the numbers on Amazon mean exactly, but when we're looking at where we sit on the bestseller ranks, it looks really low. It's like 64,000 or something. But when you compare it to other books of the same size that are coming out at around the same time that are up in the high hundreds of thousands,
Yeah.
it seems to like it's selling pretty well on Amazon. And I don't know what numbers we're going to get back from Diamond and stuff. So I think that will determine the print run. My guess is we'll probably print about 5,000 of them.
Okay, that's still fairly limited, but
I don't know. Like it seems to be getting more play and word of mouth and hype, and people seem to be more excited about it than I thought it would do well. But it's a difficult book, in a good way. So I didn't know how it would be received. And, sometimes people just it's like, let's not deal with Dave Sim. Why would you? I've seen that some people have done reviews of it on YouTube, and they're like, why are you promoting Dave Sim?
Oh, well,
because it's a good book, and like
exactly.
whatever he talks about that you don't like, this book doesn't talk about that. So it's
It looks
been
like
surprisingly well supported. Like the goodwill that me and Sean have received, like people like Jimmy helping us out, has been like so above and beyond. Like even Scott McCloud, like he wouldn't give us a quote for it, which I get, but he tweeted about the project, which is like, oh my God, like, so the goodwill towards the book has been way above expectations. So I don't know. We'll see what those numbers come back as.
It comes across to me like this is one of those kind of books where once you finish reading it, you're going to be like, okay, I got to go back to the beginning and read this again.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of book. This is another hope I have for it. I hope it's something that academics study, because it's intentionally densely layered. Dave calls it metaphysical. I would call it metatextual, like where these images repeat multiple times in different ways, and they create these 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional like relationships of meaning. We got one of the Rob Salkovitz, who's a writer for Forbes, said it's comics answer to Finnegan's Wake. That's my favorite pull quote we have. So I hope that it gets that kind of interpretive attention. That is the kind of project it is. Like I was working on it, and had to read the book a number of times and read the primary strips that he was talking about. Like I got it, I get it, I could follow the story, but to really see it was like multiple reads and going back and ordering the IDW books of Rip Kirby and reading those, because Dave's like calling out a couple panels here and there, but when you see them in the context of the original story, you go, oh, that's why he's seen the thing he's seen. So yeah, it's a dense book. I would hope that people go back and read it a number of times. It is that kind of book where once you see the ending, the pieces going along the way will make more sense.
Yeah. Now, do you reprint any of the Raymond panels in the book? And if so, was there like a legal hurdle to get to do that?
No, we don't reprint them for a couple of reasons. One is the legal hurdle.
Yeah.
Getting the rights to do that. So this is something that Dave came up with, and it serves two purposes. Anytime you see a reprint of a strip, that's basically us tracing it. So we're redrawing it. So that apparently like circumvents the legal thing. In the fine art world, we call that appropriation and recontextualization. So we've appropriated the image, we've remade it, so it's now this isn't Alex Raymond's drawing. This is my tracing of Alex Raymond's drawing, and then putting it in the layout of the page with all the commentary that recontextualizes it. So I think we should be pretty legally safe on that. That's pretty common. Much worse instances of appropriation than that happen in the fine art world and totally legally defensible. The second reason for it is, and this is a big part of the story of the book as well, those things just did not reprint well. There's a page in there that shows how awful those reprints are. You can get the IDW books. No knock on IDW. They have just been given what the materials they've been given are from like the original photos that were shot. And this is me and Sean, you know, we're doing this YouTube channel now called Living the Line, and we're talking about these issues of reproduction. If you use a camera that they had back then to shoot artwork that has really dense blacks, like Raymond will put, and then really thin fine lines, you kind of have to choose, are you shooting for the fine lines or are you shooting for the blacks? And you don't want washed out blacks printing. So usually what happens is the fine lines fill in and will almost look like a black too. Like in the cross hatching, sometimes it just goes black. So the artwork just looks awful. Like if you look at the original newspaper printings, they usually look awful. If you look at even the modern collections, the only materials they have access to are those original negatives or strips, pull strips and stuff. And so even the reprintings don't look that great. So there's two ways that we fix that and like restored the art in our tracings. One is Heritage auctions a lot of Alex Raymond art and Rip Kirby art. So we can go on there and they photograph the original piece to show it for sale. And then we can basically just trace over that. And so that gives me all the information I need to know how fine his lines actually were, how many lines he actually put there. So that was an invaluable resource. But like people like IDW, Heritage Auctions isn't collaborating with them to say, here's these scans so you can use them for your book to make your book look better. You know, that they'd have to pay for the rights to all of that. If we don't have an original, we'll try and find the best reproduced strip that we can. And then knowing what we know from tracing over the high quality images that we can find, we just speculate about what the details would have been. And so we have to do some like restoration of the artwork basically while we're redrawing it. So that was the second reason, is for the book to look as nice as Dave wanted it to, and for those Alex Raymond to look as nice as his art deserves to be shown. We actually had to redraw some of it. I'll say, like, I'd seen Alex Raymond's art before. I've seen a lot of these old strip artists before and totally disregarded them because I saw the reprint and the production quality's crappy. And you think, you know, it's all right, but I don't know why why people regard this guy so well. His lines are kind of crappy and everything's gummed up and he puts black in weird spots. When I read Glamour Puss and Dave was doing this recreation of the art and showing what it actually would have looked like, then you go, oh, this guy is so amazing. So that's another thing I hope for with the book, is people look at this and these guys that have kind of been ignored, sometimes for just stylistic preference of the time, but a lot of times because people just haven't seen how good they actually are. So that was the second reason, besides the legal reason, is trying to get these things back to looking as good as they are. And then Sean Robinson, who's the owner of Living the Line, who's publishing it, he is one of the best at making sure that art reproduces perfectly, even at the most microscopic levels. He's built this skill set that the reproduction quality he can get out of a book is astonishing. Like the teeny tiniest lines reproduce and they don't fill in and get clogged up. So this is definitely, I know we're offering a digital version. Digital version will look good, but this is really something you got to see in person, and that's all because of Sean. He's done an amazing job.
All right. Did Alex Raymond leave an estate? Did he have heirs? Yeah. There's an estate, so I think that was that was something to be worried about, right? But I don't know. I'm not on the legal side of it. I know we couldn't use his. Dave had designed the cover with his signature on it, and I know we couldn't use that. That was a legal issue. Okay. Can't use his signature on the cover. Yeah, that makes sense. So it would have been like the strange death of Alex Raymond. So I've sort of like the Alex Toth books I've got where, you know, his name is used, the signature is his name. Mm-hmm. That would have looked cool. That's on the inside. You'll see Dave's design on the inside, because the inside has all of Dave's original covers that they were going to publish if it would have been single issues from IDW. I don't know how IDW has the rights to the Alex Raymond Rip Kirby books, so I'm sure for them they could have printed a cover with his signature on the
front, and it would have been okay. But I don't think we can do that.
All right. Well, those are the last hard questions that I had. Carson, thanks for coming on the show. This is a great looking book. I'm going to get in on this one before the Kickstarter is over with, I think, because I want that strip. I want that 3x8 strip to put on the wall here in a nice frame, of course.
Yeah, thank you.
So, thank you for bringing it on here. Do keep us in mind for your next project. I'm hoping that you have one, started up in the works already.
I have ideas, but man, right now, honestly, I'm working like 14-hour days as an instructor. So I have ideas. I was in the process of taking all the photographs I wanted to take before I got this job. So I have a couple models that to me are the characters now, but they all live in California, and I can't envision doing the book without them. So I don't know. I have a story I really want to tell. But it's probably going to be a couple of years before I can even start working on it, because I'll need to find time to get back to California and take lots and lots of photographs. And then I'll need to get to a place financially where I can take summers off from work and maybe not moonlight. I moonlight now and do some teaching online for places other than my primary place of employment. So it's just a time thing. And this was never an entry for me into being a comic artist. It was kind of this is the one project I really wanted to work on, and the one reason I would go back to comics was for a book like this. But I do have a story I really want to tell. Whether it happens or not, I don't know.
All right. Well, we'll watch for it, and I'll try to keep on living a healthy life so that I'll be around to see it when you do it.
Yeah, it'll be another 15 years in the making or whatever. It'll be like that one guy we never heard of before, and then he disappeared. He's back, and no one really cares about it. Yeah, which is fine by me. That's how I prefer to live my life.
Be the strange publishing disappearance of Carson Grubaugh.
Yeah. Hopefully, no
somebody
car
will do a
wrecks.
book about it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for bringing the book here, folks in the chat. Again, we appreciate you being here to ask your questions and participate in the show. We do not have a broadcast without you, and we realize that. And as always, we just hope that you had a blast while you were here.